own personal experience of finding Tim Cahill really was about breaks and about circularity of the story. I was an avid reader of Outside magazine in the 90s, and I used to read Out There faithfully. And you wrote a piece, we've talked about it before, My Malaria, which I thought was a brilliant way to tell a story about occupational hazards and about yours in particular, and about actually the science of mosquito bites and malaria. I thought that was really well done. And I've learned that I'm not the only journalist that liked that article. Do you get a lot of comments about that? Not so much.
Yeah, I do sometimes.
Yeah.
But you got to imagine that I did that column for once a month for 15 years. There's a lot of columns.
A lot of columns.
Yeah, and some of them, boom, I hit that one out of the park, and the other one is, I've got to hand it in. But I'm not done with it.
Well, that's the funny thing about writing in isolation. You never know what's happening in the mind of your reader. So for me, just as that law school professor was pivotal in your trajectory, that article was pivotal in mine because I saw a genre of travel writing that I'd never seen before. And I've described it before as like a teenager in the 50s that suddenly got turned on to Elvis Presley music and swivel in the hips and all that. It was fabulous. And I started writing. And so thank you for My Malaria.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's wonderful, Terry. I'm very pleased. And I have to say that that same sort of thing happened to me reading Edward Abbey's Desert Solitaire.
Oh, tell me about that.
Well, there's this was before was it before I got a job at Rolling Stone? But I read Desert Solitaire, and there's a story called Dead Man at Grandview Point. And I read that story and I said, you can do this in nonfiction? Holy cow.
Holy moly.
This is brilliant.
Yeah.
It's brilliant. And if I had to talk about any great influence on my writing, it would be Edward Abbey, that just suddenly gave me permission to do that sort of thing. And I hope that that's what you felt.
That's exactly,
you permission to write that way.
You did. And I went out and I pitched Adventure West magazine, which no longer exists, and got a paid article about a cave exploration. It was the first one I did. The last one for many years after that, I worked in government. But that excitement of seeing something new open up is what you did for me, and apparently for a writer in the Washington Post and for others that you may not even know about.
Yeah.
Well, tell people about My Malaria. Tell about the opening, and that was the best opening I've ever read, with the yellow slicker and the sewer.
As I recall, we were sitting in a little pueblo outside of Santa Fe, New Mexico, and I was having lunch with the publisher of Outside magazine, and something was going on. They'd taken the manhole off. There were people working, and they dragged some guy who'd been working down there out of the sewer, and it wasn't appetizing. And I believe that I said, well,
you said the stench was incredible, or something to that effect.
And I think I said something about, well, maybe my job isn't that bad. So
Because if you remember, Oprah had just asked you to come on and talk about jobs or something.
uh, she wanted me to talk about that Gacy book.
Oh, she did? Bait and switch.
Yeah. But
Well,
I don't,
anyway,
yeah.
that article, I think, changed my life. And so another thing that really has impressed me over the years, Tim, we've been Facebook friends since I went to your class at the Travel Writers and Photographers Conference in 2019. Um, I noticed then in becoming Facebook friends that you are connected with something that's called a proper walk in Kenya. And not just connected, but you've put actual sweat. I don't know if you put tears into it too, but tell us about that. Oh, and the preface before you do that, I wanted to read is that it's the one last great Africa journey, 160 miles of wildest Kenya, a trek done in the style of the oldest explorers, a pack of seriously ornery camels, and one really good cause.
I met a fellow named Michael Farley while I was on book tour somewhere, and uh, had lunch with him, and he proposed this story. It's called The Proper Walk. Uh, he was a Peace Corps volunteer in Kenya in the 70s, and he stayed uh, in that area. He didn't stay in that area of Kenya. He went back time and time again. Speaks fluent Swahili. Is and he's a Peace Corps volunteer. That's what he does. That's where his heart is. So that's and he uh, this place called Makindu is probably you come into Mombasa on a truck. The first place you'd stop for the night would be Makindu. And as you know, the truck drivers were the people that were spreading AIDS. Makindu was uh, people, they were AIDS orphans all over. They were living in garbage dumps there, and something had to be done. And a bunch of people got together, uh, Africans and Americans, uh, and put up this Kindu Child Center. It's not quite an orphanage. The the children are brought in. We used to actually educate them, but now there's universal education in Kenya, so uh, we don't do that anymore. We feed them. Uh, they get a good lunch every day. They have place to go, things to do. They're clean. They get medical help, and we do basically what's a walkathon, but it's a African walkathon. Uh, so uh, the idea, Michael, when he was a Peace Corps uh, volunteer there, he walked everywhere doing his irrigation project, and one day he was complaining about it to a Kenyan, and the Kenyan said, 3 miles, that's hardly a proper walk.
Oh,
Well, what is a proper walk? Well, a proper walk is you go from one place to the other. You don't know how you're going to get there, and you stop when you get there. So our proper walk is at least 100 miles, at least 10 days. The last one I did was in the northern frontier area of Kenya across the Saguda Desert, which is uh, known as the desert or the Valley of Black Death. So it's it's quite a wonderful walk. Everybody said we're going to die, but it's we know how to do this. We've got camels. and camels carry water. Uh, it's called the Valley of Black Death because there's all kinds of uh, uh, lava flow, like the mountains of the moon. Uh, so that's quite a pleasure to walk across when it's 100 degrees. So
Well, not to cast any shade on our friends who've done the Camino del Santiago. Um, that seems like about a similar length, 160 miles or so, but they don't have wild animals.
mm, no, but it's a different experience. I've done the Camino.
Have you?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I loved it. I loved it. But it's a different experience. You're meeting all these wonderful people that are coming with you, and they're all doing it for different uh, reasons. Some of them spiritual, some of them, it's. But the uh, the proper walk, uh, you are meeting uh, local people that uh, they 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 likely haven't seen someone like you, like me. Um, the children want to touch your skin. You've
Mhm.
been there, you've done it, um, and uh, and you talk with them and you dance with them, and it's it's fun. And they say, "Well, yeah, where are you going?" We expect to get to Lake Tanganyika in 4 or 5 days. You're going to die.
Yeah. Oh, they said that to you.
Oh yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
wow. I thought it was maybe,
Well, they're not used to a camel caravan.
oh,
You could not carry enough water to do that.
sure.
So, if you got a dozen camels, and sometimes camel gets sick, and you know, uh, but you have copious camels.
Sure. Well, I don't know what it is about the African people that worms their way into your heart and creates this bond that persists for years. The pictures that I've seen show you dancing with children all over you. They show you with great joy. And I see that you're still involved with them 20 years after you did
Oh
the
yeah,
story for National Geographic Adventure.
yes, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, well, it's my pet charity. Um,
Yeah.
these these kids, uh, there's 14,000 now,
Oh, wow.
um, and it's sometimes you might be worried about uh, a charity. Uh, where's my money going? Uh, I know this place. I know the books. Uh, the I know the people there. I know the money is going to these kids. I know these kids graduate from school.
Mm.
Uh, and,
You've
yeah,
seen a lot of people who are disadvantaged, who are in great pain and misery. What is it about these people that touched your heart in a way so that they became your pet charity?
the it's like you do what you can do, and this is one thing that I know I can do, um, and I know that uh, it works. I've seen it for 20 years, um, and I know it. I know it works. I know it's a great benefit to these children who need help, and I don't know. Uh, and it's probably I wouldn't be doing it unless my friend Michael Farley had introduced me to it.
Hmm.
And I hope that I'm able to introduce other people to the McKindu Children's Project.
Well, I am now on their mailing list.
Oh,
When I
good.
went to the Kamuli district in Uganda, we got off the bus. There were about 7 of us. And this one little girl attached herself to me, um, held my hand, stroked my arm. And I don't know what happened, but I love this little girl. And I love her siblings. And I love her village. And so they are starting a very similar effort. Really, it looks very similar to what the children's group in Kenya does, with um, feeding, making sure they get to school, all of those things that those children need to have a chance for success. Ultimately, they'll make up their own kind of destinies, but at least they have a chance. And so I'm going to be watching the group in Kenya very closely to see, okay, you're 20 years ahead of us in Kamuli. How did you get there? What things can we do to spread this?
Um, I will get you in touch with Michael.
I would love that. I would
Yeah.
absolutely love that. Yeah. I don't know. I may be too elderly and infirm to do the 160 miles, but it sounds like a blast.
Um, no, uh, Michael, as a longtime board member of the McKindo Children's Project, can fill you in on how they do it and what they do. Uh, uh,
Awesome. I appreciate that. I think we're about out of time, but I did want to kind of wrap up by making a couple observations. Every year, when I see you at the Book Passage Conference, I'm taken by the number of aspiring and accomplished writers who are older. Many of us are retired. You once said, the tragedy of life is not that it ends so soon, but that we wait so long to begin it. Why do you think we do that, and what's at stake if we put it off?
I uh, the story that I told you earlier about doing well in law school and dropping out. Um, well, I did that, but look, other people don't have that. Uh, they don't have the freedom to do that. They may be married. They may have kids. They cannot. They they have responsibilities that must be taken care of. And when it's it's not when they have the time, it's when they are able to uh, fulfill those responsibilities that we have in life.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then they make the time. Um, we all know stories of people who uh, were raising raising a couple of kids and getting up at 5 in the morning to write for an hour and a half,
Mm-hmm.
and you can do that if that is your if that's your drive. Um, yeah, and so it's really never too late. That's what I kind of.
Until you're in the ambulance
You're-
or at the hospital.
well, you can maybe maybe what was it, only 9 or 10 years ago that I was in the evacuation helicopter taken for dead.
Let's talk about that in this context then. Did you have thoughts afterwards, or did you say, well, there goes another adventure?
You know, um, it did not affect me in the way it affected the people I was with.
Mm.
Um, for those that don't know, I got thrown out of a raft in the Colorado River and managed to swim to shore, sat down and fell over, passed out. Uh, uh, there was a, they could not find a pulse. I turned blue. Um, and I uh, eventually came to. But here's the deal. Um, the and there was a registered nurse and a wilderness EMT there. They could not find a pulse.
Well,
Uh, I was gone as far as they were concerned for a minute, several minutes. Nobody took a stopwatch to it. But when I was out, when I was lying there, I did not see a light that I was supposed to go to. I did not. Uh, I didn't see a guy with horns and a pitchfork. I didn't see anything. I was just when I came to, uh, the guy was doing CPR, and I tried to hit him because it hurt. That meant he was doing it right. I think I said something like, "Rawr!" And all of the people around, they had just seen their friend who they'd been, rafting with for 10 days. They just saw him die. And then they saw him come back to life. And it affected them. Me, I was just gone for, I left for a few minutes. It's, and I thought later on, shouldn't I devote my life to good works now? Shouldn't I? Uh, uh, but apparently not. I just did not. Uh, I did not understand this. I still talk to my friends who were there, and they're still emotionally affected by it. But it didn't affect me in that particular way. I don't know why, Terry.
well, so I think that there is a perception of you as being invincible, that you will always be there, that there will never come a time when there's not Tim Cahill making his sly comments and making us laugh, singing karaoke. Um, and we don't want to think about that.
No.
But if you had a chance to tell us something that you think maybe we don't know or we ought to know before that time, what would it be?
Wow. Um, yeah. Uh, I don't know. I was going to say something. It just sounds so uh, pedestrian. Just be
Throw it out
kind.
there.
Be
Yeah.
kind. Be nice. It's really, it's really much. Your life goes much easier if you're nice. If you're uh, angry and argumentative all the time, uh, you'll get that back like a mirror.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Much easier to be pleasant.
I think that's really good advice. And I don't think it's pedestrian, especially in today's fragmented world. I think it's a message that we really need to take in. Um, Confucius said, and this is not my quote, this is Kim Frank's quote. She was on last month, and he said, "We all have two lives, and the second begins when we realize that we only have one."
Uh,
And I think that's so
okay.
true.
Yeah, it is.
That is so true. And so I see a lot of us who come to learn to write, who come to do something now that maybe we didn't have time for before, as cognizant of the fact that there's only one life. And if we don't do this, maybe we can't live with ourselves. What would you say to the person who's listening now who maybe writing isn't it, but maybe they're passionate about something and they haven't stepped out to follow that passion, to live that one best life? What would your advice be?
Well, my advice has always been to do it.
Yeah.
Um, you know, uh, you probably worked your way through a cloud of dark responsibility in your life, and you think that that's all that life has to offer you. Uh, well, what about your passion for? I don't know. It could be as simple as narrow gauge railroads. There's people that love narrow gauge railroads. There's people that um, uh, travel all over the world to see the last of the narrow gauge railroads. Uh, in fact, there's a guy that wrote a best-selling book about that.
Mm.
Paul Theroux's The Old Patagonia Express.
Mm.
And so, you know, you would say, follow your passion uh, to uh, examine narrow gauge railroads. It sounds boring to other people who are not interested in it. But if you, uh, I'm talking in terms of a writer, if in fact you are very fascinated in it, you can, as a writer, take us by the hand and introduce us to why you started becoming passionate about it and what it's like on this place. Um, and somehow being able to approach others and uh, infect them with the enthusiasm that you have about the subject matter is a satisfying part of life.
Our friend, Dr. Irene Salter, has said that what we need to do is pay close attention to those things that produce awe in us, that has an effect on, I don't understand the mechanics of the brain, but it makes a lot of sense. And so what is it that still causes you awe?
I, I, I just took the dogs walking today. It snowed yesterday. The sun's out. The mountains are glittering all around. I'm awestruck just about every day here.
Well, and she further says that you don't need to travel to experience it. You don't need to go to some cathedral in Europe. You can experience it right at home by looking for it.
Irene is a neuroscientist,
She
is she not?
is. And she
Yes.
was in our class this last summer
Yes.
at Book
Yeah,
Passage.
I remember her story very well.
Yeah.
But,
Well, we're at this point where I offer you the chance to pontificate on anything you wish that I had asked you, but did not.
well, um, I've been a journalist for over 50 years, and sometimes you cover a story that you it makes you angry and you feel a little bit hopeless. I want to tell you quickly about a story that I did in Oaxaca, Mexico, oh, about a species of turtle, olive ridley. I went down there to see the Ariba zone, to see them come up. I think they call it the Aribata now, Aribata. Uh, the the Ariba zone, where 100,000 turtles come up on the beach and lay their eggs. What I found was a company killing off uh, the turtles, and what they did is uh, there was no Ariba zone. The turtles didn't come up, but they had a dog and pony show for the press, flew in journalists from Mexico City, and had fake scientists in this room. Whom I didn't know they were fake at the time. My I couldn't ask questions at the press conference because my Spanish isn't that good, and so I waited for the press to go. And 2 days later, I came back, and there was no lab. There were no scientists. The turtle eggs that they were supposed to be replacing were rotting in styrofoam boxes. And I talked to an old man who was sitting there, and I said, well, "What's happening?" And he said, "They all left." And I said, "What about the Ariba zone?" He said, "You want to see the Ariba zone? Go up to the dump." Now, I don't know if you've ever been at a dump in the tropics, but it doesn't smell very good, and especially if you've just put in 50,000 or 70,000 dead turtles. I wrote that story. I was angry. That was the most evil place I'd seen in my life. And, and so I thought, well, okay, that's it. Uh, you know, nothing will change. And yet it did. Now, it wasn't just me. It was there was the Mexican conservationist Boris de Swan, Juan Jose de la Vega. Uh, but my story got a lot of attention, and it was picked up in the Mexican version of 60 Minutes, and it began. There was a turtle conference uh, in Miami where the guy that had the fake lab came up. He was arrested. Uh, mugshot. Uh, he fled after that, um, uh, but uh, the the thing started to change. It changed uh, over the course of 40 some years now. And if you look for uh, look on YouTube, you can find uh, uh, shots of the Ariba zone happening, 100,000 turtles, helicopter shots. The Mexican Navy is out a little bit beyond the breakers, making sure that they're not fishing. The Mexican Marines are on the beach, making sure that people aren't digging up the eggs. And as far as I can see, Mexican people are proud of seeing this. They love seeing this every year, these turtles coming up to lay their eggs, this incredible weight of biology. And I had something to do with that change.
Mm.
And that uh, that is one thing I'm proud of. And it's also something about the value of writing a story about something and getting uh, getting other people to see what's happening. So that, and I guess the point I'm trying to make is that sometimes as a journalist, you do stories and you feel, yeah, it's fruitless. Nothing will change. And I've got 40 years, nearly 50 years of experience. And this is one thing that I could see that changed. Yes.
Well, and you also just taught me a really important lesson, which is that following your passion isn't always about awe. It isn't always about beautiful, wonderful things that make you feel good. Following your passion can be righting a wrong, which is an equally valid way to step out and do something.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Excellent. Well, how finally can my listeners? This has been so much fun. I can't wait until the conference this summer.
I can't wait either. I love it.
Oh, I know. I just, karaoke. You guys are all great, but karaoke's right up at the top of my list. How do my listeners follow you? Do you have a website, Facebook page? You don't do any of that stuff.
No.
Okay.
No, I'm old school. Old school.
Okay. Well, it was a very good school, and I'm really enjoying it. Thank you so much, Tim, for this time. It's been a pleasure.
Hey, thank you, Terry.
You bet. We've been talking with literary adventure travel writer Tim Cahill. My takeaways, Tim's a really genuinely nice guy who has always, and after law school, followed his passion. I also want to take away that the saying that if you follow your passion, things will fall into place. Kim Frank told us, and Terry's doing it in April, if you want to see change, you have to act. So I also took away that we have to act. I just want to tell you guys, we can do this. And I hope that Tim's story about his passion, his vision, and his path are speaking to you now, that he has inspired you to make your own path to Carpe Diem. to seize the day. This is Terry Murison at Terry's Doing It, www.terrymurison.com, because I do have a website. And until next time, don't just think about it, do it.